No problem. So morning all, my name's Shane Young from the Barnsley Northern Chamber of Commerce. We've got our colleague Sam Christmas from Sheffield Chamber who's joined us as well this morning, as we've got multiple members from both chambers. So welcome all, hope you're all well. Fantastic day outside, it's good to see some of you are outside in the sunshine. Today's webinar is going to be focusing on B2B marketing during a crisis, and we've got Dan and Karl from Objective Creative who will be presenting the webinar this morning. Just to give you a little bit of information on Objective Creative, I know Dan's going to cover a little bit more than what I will, but Objective Creative is an award-winning marketing agency based in Sheffield who deliver strategic marketing, creative design and digital projects on behalf of their clients, their B2B clients and public sector clients. Before I pass you on to Dan, I'm just going to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and we'll be sending it out through our network and through our social media channels and on our website afterwards. So if you do miss anything, you can always recap on there. Participants are all muted other than the speakers this morning. However, we do have the chat function, the conversation box. So if you do have any questions along the way or you want to challenge Dan, I know Dan's more than happy to be challenged, then pop them in there. We can pick them up as we go between the four of us, or we can come back to them at the end. So I'm now going to hand over to Dan, who will start the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not sure I said I was happy to be challenged, but I'm not joking. So so I'm Dan Broadbent. I'm Managing Director of Objective Creative. We're a full-service business-to-business marketing agency. We're also delighted to be members of both chambers, hence our involvement with both chambers this morning. So we really appreciate both the opportunity and everyone being here with us today. If there are any problems, I know earlier it was mentioned that I was a little quiet. That has never happened before, but maybe that's a part of what they call in the new normal. So if you do need anything doing when we go through this presentation, then please do let me know. So we're going to see how well we work together. I'm going to speak and Karl's going to move the slides through. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, let's see how that goes.
Okay, let's kick off then, Karl.
Yep.
Okay, so in terms of what we're going to be covering today, then we're going to be covering, broadly speaking, some of the principles of B2B marketing, but then also give you some hints and tips that are particularly useful within this environment. So within the crisis, how we actually bounce back as a series of businesses here in Barnsley, Rotherham and Sheffield. So some of the tips will be universal. Hopefully they'll help you at any time, but we've tried to focus in on what's particularly important at these challenging times. So in terms of the webinar, we'll be looking at creating an effective marketing strategy to positively respond to the crisis. We'll look at some content to become thought leaders in your sector. Some proven methods to generate more sales leads, which ultimately is what I know all of our clients are most interested in. And then steps we can take now, which will help when restrictions start to be lifted. And if we believe what's been leaked to the press over the last few days, then hopefully we're not too far off some sectors having a little bit more freedom to operate as they normally would. So in terms of the end of this, what we'll be offering everyone is your opportunity to claim a complimentary marketing consultation. So although we can give some general advice on this call, then we do know that really to give you anything very meaningful, it needs to be tailored to your individual businesses. So we're more than happy to do that. We can book in some slots at the end of this call. So we've said there are 10 consultations available. If we do have a few more, then that's absolutely fine. And the whole emphasis of what we're talking about today is about being a helpful friend and being able to help and collaborate with other businesses. So we really want to practice what we preach on that. So if you have any questions on marketing strategy and you'd like us to evaluate your current strategy, if you'd like us to run any technical reports on SEO or on PPC performance or on your website, or you just want a fresh pair of eyes on what you're doing, then we'd very much like to do that after today's Zoom meeting. So just a little bit about us, and then we'll get on to the information that you're all here for today. So my background is marketing strategy, more than 20 years experience in that area, generally working with either SMEs, so ambitious SMEs, or also with some PLC clients as well. We think the principles are the same, but exactly how we apply those principles may differ depending on the size of all our businesses. Most of my experience has been local to here, but I've also worked internationally in the Middle East as well. So sometimes that can be useful if you're working with some international trade, which I know at the moment must be particularly difficult. We work both with B2B clients and also at times with public sector organisations. But the difference between us and generalist agencies are that sort of 85% of our business is with business-to-business clients. So hopefully that gives us a little bit of a different perspective. I'll actually let Karl speak now.
Thank you, mate. I'm Karl, with 20 years experience throughout the UK. Not quite made it as far as Dan. I managed to make it up to Leeds for about 4 or 5 years.
That's nearly far enough.
That's as far as I made it for me. Needing my passport there. But no, some of the clients I've worked for, again, mainly in B2B, including some product-related businesses, B2B, like Kingfisher Lighting in the region, consultancy-based businesses, and a couple of local names there you may recognise, Asraboy and SIG. I also contribute to national and international conferences on digital marketing in particular and SEO as a specialism. My background is creative, but more and more as digital has taken a foothold over the sort of last 10, 15 years, switched more to overseeing our digital and our creative output of the agency.
Okay, great. And Leeds is fine. I mean, you know, going to the park at the moment feels like an outing, doesn't it? So that's far enough. In terms of ourselves, we have recommended agency register recognitions. That means that our clients have voted for us to go into that register, and we're one of the UK's fastest growing B2B marketing agencies. In terms of services, you see them all on screen there. So if there's anything you want to talk to us about at the end, then you have all of our services there. You know how we can help you. And finally, in terms of who we're working with, our affiliation with Google is important. So any hints and tips you need on AdWords or analytics, we have the highest level of certification with Google. So that will help in terms of making sure that you're found for your search terms on search engines. We also affiliate with Sheffield Hallam University. They chose us to deliver their Digital Marketing Masters programme. So that's really good from 2 perspectives. Firstly, we can have a little tick in the box with Sheffield Hallam saying they've chosen us as their specialist agency locally. But also it means that we can learn from the 21, 22-year-olds who are going to be the marketeers of the future. So how's your TikTok, Karl?
Interesting.
And the sort of range of people that we work with, I know there'll be people from PLCs here and there'll be people from some ambitious SMEs. So hopefully you see some names on screen when Karl flicks the screen over that you recognise. So hopefully we've got something that will suit your size of business. So let's get into it then. B2B marketing during a crisis. And first of all, we just want to really give a little bit of background then. So Campaign magazine, which is one of the industry magazines, they've done a study showing that marketing budgets have fallen at the fastest rate since 2009. So the situation we're in at the moment isn't ideal for marketing agencies, but it just means that we need to move a little faster and be a bit more flexible and work a bit smarter, because a lot of businesses have got reduced marketing budgets at the moment. But the good news is that when others go quiet, your voice gets louder. And that's a quote that I've taken from the Marketing Agency Professional Institute. And that is something that really anybody, business coach, anybody that is sort of teaching from academia through to people with that practical business leadership experience would say, that during a time of a downturn, be that a recession or be it these completely unprecedented circumstances we're in now, it's more important than ever to continue marketing because there's less noise around you. So put simply, that if you have a sales message, there's a lot less people that are competing with that message. So you will actually cut through with that message a lot more effectively at the moment. So your pound will go further at the moment than it would have done in a very competitive environment. We do understand, though, there's another side to that you do need to have the cash flow to be able to continue. So we're very sensitive to that. But if you are in a position where you can continue marketing, even if it's things you do yourself, then at the moment there'll be a much greater chance of success because there's less noise in the particular markets that you're working in. And we took another piece from a paper from Harvard Business School that really concluded, looking at previous recessions, that businesses that maintain marketing spend during a crisis often emerge from the downturn with an increased market share. So that's what we're all aiming for. It might not always seem like that at the moment, but if we continue marketing and our voice is the one that's a little louder, then at the end of that, then we will actually reap the benefits. So how do we do that? Well, I think people might be a little sensitive to continue marketing with aggressive sales messages. It doesn't seem right when we're seeing everything that's happening in the world to be very aggressive and opportunistic. And I think I've heard other speakers say this, and it's very much true, that the number of emails we've had from CEOs of companies that we've never dealt with telling us how much they care is frightening. So just putting out a blanket message that isn't authentic, that doesn't represent your brand, certainly isn't the right thing to do. It's also not the right thing to do to go out there and to really aggressively chase a sale when people are worried about very many other things, the security of their own business, the safety of themselves and their family. So what we would say is that we should be empathetic, we should be supportive, and we should provide advice and support. So we've given an example from a client, a fantastic client of ours, who are really able to say to their clients, and even people that aren't their clients, that if you've got a question, if you're worried, if we can help, then we will do so. And we do think that is really the right approach. And that's why we contacted the Chamber, and they were kind enough to allow us the time this morning that we want to practice what we preach there. So anyone that has any issues that we might be able to solve from a marketing perspective, then that's why we're here today. If you can do that in your business area, then that is the type of effective marketing that when the crisis starts to peter away, and hopefully that day comes, then people will remember that you were the business that were there to help them in the bad times, rather than just the businesses there when the sun is shining. So I think that's something that is really important, to have empathetic, and I think the term that seems to be spoken about in marketing circles is compassionate communications. Is that jargonistic enough, Karl?
That's good enough for me.
So that will all form part of your brand value. So brand value, again, it's the sort of term that marketeers love, but brand value is about what your brand stands for. And there'll be some soft messages, and then there'll be some messages that really get to the heart of what you do. So there's a few brands that have come out of this crisis, I believe, not very well at all. I mean, Virgin is one of them. So Virgin Atlantic will have had a fun, they will have had a compassionate, a caring, an anti-establishment kind of voice to its brand. I have done some work where I've seen exactly the kind of brand communications that Virgin say that they stand for. And then during this crisis, they've yesterday announced that a third of their workforce are going to be without a job in the middle of a pandemic. So in that instance, there's people whose brand value will have significantly decreased during a crisis such as this. And then you take some of the supermarkets. So Iceland were the first supermarket to say they were going to ring-fence a period of time to say that those that are key workers, NHS workers, care workers, would have safe access to their stores, and that they would have the opportunity to get the provisions that they want. So that's an example of a brand whose brand value will have increased during the crisis. I've got on screen some examples of how much a brand value is estimated to be worth. So this is from a study from Millward Brown, try and bring a bit of science to it. So I'm sure you're familiar with most of these names on screen. These are very, very big PLCs. But even at an SME level, I'd like to think that all of our businesses will have a value locally amongst the people we target. So the value of Microsoft brand is estimated there in the hundreds of billions. And that's why it's so important to invest in your brand. And our challenge is to make sure our brand stands for something in our sector and in our locality. So it's all relevant really to the size of the business. And the good news is that if you're a business-to-business brand, then you can consistently keep your brand value. So 14 of the top 20 B2B brands in 2006 are still ranked in the top 20 today. But if we look at consumer marketing, Conversely, only 8 of the top 20 B2B brands in 2006 remain in today's top 20. And if we think about it, then that does make sense, because in 2006 we may have been talking about the likes of Woolworths and CNA, whereas today, of course, we're looking at Amazon and Netflix. So it does make some sense. So we're not saying that anybody on this call necessarily would have ambitions to be in the top 20 brands in the world, but what we're saying is if you can say the right things now, then within our locality, within our sectors, then if you can build a reputation for being good people that are there to help others, then that is something that will pay dividends during the recovery phase. And how do we build that brand value? There's a number of ways we do so. The part that is often overlooked by agencies is the messaging. I would say that because my background is more the words. Karl does the easy bit, he does the pictures. But in terms of the messaging, then that is really, really important. And that's the good news there, is that's something that you have more control over. So if you aren't necessarily a creative person, or a graphic design skills aren't amongst your team, then you can still make sure that the messaging that you send is consistent and it reflects the principles of your business. It's authentic to what you actually believe in. And during a time like this, people really want the comfort of knowing that they're actually dealing with real people who share the same concerns, both about their businesses and the wider society. So I think that's really important, to make sure that the messaging is correct, the branding is consistent, and we're creating successful campaigns through the best marketing channels, the channels that are going to be most effective at this time. So when I talk about marketing channels, that might be HTML email, that might be through pay-per-click marketing, it might be when the world returns to some sort of normality, having some face-to-face contact there through, exhibition or event. But whatever that channel is, then that is really where you need to put your resource and make sure that that is properly researched to make sure we're getting the most effective return. So wherever your brand lives, we need to be consistent. And that can only happen if we plan. So these are principles that we would say are true in all environments. But at the moment, everything is more important because everybody's budgets have got that much more strain on them. So whatever it is you do, one of the things we could do after today is to make sure we've identified who our key audiences are. So I don't mind saying that when we launched the agency 8 years ago, we had a focus towards business-to-business marketing. But as with any startup business, it's difficult to say no if someone knocks on your door with an opportunity that doesn't really align with that core principle. So in the early days, we may have done more business-to-consumer projects because, like any business in the growth phase, we're wanting to make sure that we can cement our position before we really say no to things. But what really, really made a big difference and helped our business really continue to grow at a more rapid rate were where we were true to ourselves and went in being a B2B specialist. And B2B specialism has lots of sectors, and we really honed in on the professional services and the advanced manufacturing sectors. And that really helped our business because there was a clear proposition. If you want a generalist agency, there are lots of them. If you want somebody who's right specifically for you, then we were in that pool of one or two. So if you could think in that way, at the moment, people will not want to take risks. They'll want somebody that really understands their business. So to identify your key audience very clearly is a great bit of advice from a marketing perspective. I know it's difficult because you don't want to turn down any business, but if you can shout very loudly to the people you can help the most, then that's a good bit of advice. And in doing that, we should be reviewing our messaging and our branding and make sure that it aligns to those audiences, and look at who your competitors are. So what are your competitors doing? Is there something that will make them choose you over a competitor? So the psychology of making a choice is that if we're looking at shortlisting three potential partners, if there's two that are very similar, we may put those in the mix. But if there's one that's very different, that has a unique proposition that really speaks to you, you're more likely to get on that shortlist. So it's important to know what your competitors are doing in order for you to have that step above them. And also make sure that you're giving people those distinctive reasons to choose your business now more than ever. And that could come into messaging. So I didn't just want to use examples that were with large PLCs. I wanted to sort of speak about some of our clients who are fantastic SME businesses. So we've got a contract cleaning company here called Assured Cleaning. They're a very big player in the Northwest market. And this has been an interesting time for them because they've gone from not being able to cope with the workload through to most of their clients being closed. And hopefully we're going to pick up again as we come out of the restrictions. But the simple two examples you've got there, and this is the sort of thing that you could hopefully do yourself if you didn't necessarily want to engage an agency, is rather than on the right where their competitor talks about everything they do in a couple of paragraphs, on the left is Assured. And what we created for them is very similar content, but rather than just being a paragraph of text, there's a series of promises that really jump out at people. So that's more about the presentation, is finding how can we actually get across our key messages in a more distinctive way. So rather than just that sentence of text on the right, we've got those key promises. So then if somebody then says, what does Assured stand for? Those are the authentic promises from the owner of that business. So again, that's something that you could think about creating as we work through your marketing communications. And also telling a story. So one of the great bugbears really is that B2C communications, so business to consumer communications, are often years and years ahead of B2B. And there's no reason that should be the case. And I think what we're trying to do is try and champion B2B businesses and say that we can actually do exactly the same. If it works in business to consumer, some of those same principles will work in B2B. Because when you buy a purchase for your business, you're often using the same tactics as if you're buying something for home. So if you're buying a sofa for home and you're buying an office chair for the office, surprisingly, you're still the same person. So if it works, if you're used to being engaged with a story by IKEA, then it's still in your psyche to actually relate to a story from a business to business manufacturer or supplier, and especially with younger people. So 40% of B2B buyers are 18 to 34. And younger buyers are even more likely to engage with relatable brands that have a story. So rather than talk about your product, talk about what your product or service can do for the end consumer. It might be a business, but businesses don't buy products and services. People who work for businesses or own businesses buy products and services. So that's why it's important to tell a story. And the quote that I've got on screen from the Marketing Week event that we participated in is particularly salient, saying B2B marketeers need to stop selling and start inspiring, bringing more emotion to their content promotion rather than just promotion. So it's not about talking about what you do, it's about what that can do for a customer. And this again is completely true of what we might call normal times, well, the world we lived in 3 months ago, as much as it is today. But all of these, I think, are more important today than ever. Right, I can take a breath now, Carl.
Yeah, thanks, yeah. So now is the time where digital really is going to come to the fore. I mean, it's usually a big part of any marketing mix anyway these days. But in these times where obviously we're restricted in our maybe normal duties of face-to-face meetings and more postal DM, then digital is where we can really cut through and we can carry on activity and carry on generating inquiries and business. And we've been doing this ourselves. We practice what we preach. And in the last few weeks, and we've still been receiving inquiries from digital channels ourselves. So more focus to website with search results is more important than ever. And Google, as we all know, has got the market share with around 2/3 of all search traffic. On average, 2 trillion searches a year are made. I think in these times that's going to increase because people are more digital based. And a growing number as well of searches are made by voice now rather than type. So a lot of the conferences and a lot of the seminars that we're part of, sort of internationally, there's a growing number of searches done by voice. If we think about when we're using search engines, how we may type a search, for example, the best recommended restaurant in Sheffield, should we be allowed to actually go to restaurants back in the good old days?
The one that's open, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. How we type a search is very different to how we'd ask our voice-enabled assistants in our mobile phones, in our Alexas, in our Echoes and so on and so forth. So thinking about how people search by voice rather than type is something that should definitely be towards the top of your list of SEO and digital actions, because how those voice-enabled devices access your web information is very different than to how the Google and other algorithm sort of search box access your website. So it's something that you can start looking at. Well, you may have a bit more time to do so and focus more on digital channels. Also, the beauty of digital marketing, as we all know, is we can very, very precisely measure the impact and the ROI of digital marketing activity, especially search engine marketing and pay-per-click. Are things that at the minute, if you started doing SEO a while ago, you should be reaping the dividends of that throughout the pandemic and into the future. It's not something that personally and as an agency we'd recommend it started today, purely for the fact that there's lots of behind the scenes technical on page work and also lots of content production involved that makes sort of the lead time to start seeing that return sort of months ahead, sometimes even into double digit months. So search engine marketing, if it's something you've been doing for a while, is something that should still be a focus and generating leads into your business. But something like pay-per-click advertising, if it's something you may have tried before, or something that you've been doing just before the pandemic actually started, pay-per-click is something that we can instantly turn up and down, or we can start and stop. And it may be that you were looking at pay-per-click maybe 12 months ago and found that it might not work for certain areas of your business, but with less competition, with some clients stopping activity because they can't deliver services if they're sort of face-to-face services or business-to-business services, it may be that you can cut through, like Dan spoke about earlier. If there's less noise, that's easy to cut through. So, and that's also true in the digital marketing world with PPC.
The other good thing with PPC there, Karl, and I was on a call yesterday with a company called Sendable, who are one of the social media platforms, and they've got people together in that call last night. And they were saying really that they found a lot of clients were looking to be able to get results in 60 to 90 days because they needed to be able to get cash moving in their businesses. And PPC and HTML direct marketing are great ways of doing that. SEO is the best advice, but it's not the best advice, as you say, within 60 to 90 days. So if you are in a business where, as a marketing manager, you're wanting to put forward a business case to a finance director or CEO, then it's worth bearing in mind that there are certain activities that will return results in 60 to 90 days and other activities that are medium to long-term burns. And medium to long-term burns don't seem to be as attractive when everybody is very conscious of making sure that they're preserving cash within a business.
Absolutely. And we can track the journey of potential customers, which is obviously something that, again, we see lots of client campaigns, potential client campaigns that aren't effectively tracking, so we don't know exactly which keywords, which ads, or which channels have sent the traffic and then converted. So making sure we're fully measurable all the way through the journey is really, really important. And having optimized landing pages, again, the amount of PPC campaigns that we audit or take over the management of that are just sending people to, at best, a contact page and at worst, the home page of a website when the ad's very specific about a particular product or service, is quite scary. So having those optimized landing pages where we're sending people directly to a page that's giving them more information or backup information, so the keywords and ads that triggered it is very, very, very important. And also we can apply some science to those landing pages to make sure that we're doing more of what works and less of what doesn't. So increasing the number of website visits is the first half of the battle. But then once we get them there, like we said, if we're getting them to a home page or getting to a contact page, we're asking them to do a little bit more than what they need to do. So the most successful way of doing this is to use customized landing pages to capture leads that are there just to capture information and nothing else. So we've spent at best our hard-earned time and at worst our hard-earned cash to get people to our website and to our landing pages. We want to make sure that we're doing the optimum we can to make sure we turn those visitors into leads by following some best practices, which I'm going to step through now. So the first thing is to make sure on our optimized landing page that we're keeping any form. Obviously, we need to capture detail, absolutely, but keeping those forms as short and simple as possible. I'm yet to meet anyone who enjoys filling in website forms or any forms for that matter. So if we don't need to know their phone and email, just one of them, just ask one. If we don't need to know their position, we don't need to know their postcode at this stage, we just need to know the name of the person, the company, and their email or phone number, potentially. Now, there may be other business reasons, if you feed into CRM, that you might need to know more information than that. But let's just always try and have in the mind of getting the least amount of information we need to take the next step and follow up that opportunity, rather than trying to get the whole data set in the first instance, because it's going to be much more effective to keep those forms short and simple. Also, making sure that calls to actions, like buttons, are very prominent, and also there's a positive message. So rather than just submit, but again, who likes submitting anything? It sounds very, very formal and quite one way. Once it's submitted, that's it. So putting actually a call to action or a benefit in that call to action can really help increase the effectiveness of digital marketing campaigns. So if you're going to get a free instant quote, you're going to get access to some further information, you can download a report or a white paper, actually include that in the call to action, and doing that can vastly increase the conversion rate of your campaigns. Also, making sure that all the important information is what we call above the fold, so above the area of the screen on average that most people see before they have to scroll down. So again, the amount of website contact forms, and especially on landing pages, we see that are right at the very bottom. So there's lots of information, graphics, images, and the contact forms are the very, very last thing. Most people don't get there, so we need to make sure that all the important information, so the headline messaging that Dan and our marketing team work on, relatable imagery, and most importantly, that really simple, quick form is all above the fold, so no one has to scroll down and do anything else to find the information we need to give you that lead. So making it as easy as possible by putting everything above the fold is tip number 3.
And that's something that is very much true on any website. So as well as the landing page on your main website, and I would hazard a guess that more than 50% of people that we actually speak to, they kind of don't pass this test in terms of their website at the moment. So this is something that if you have content management system access on your website, you might be able to do something about yourself without actually running up any costs. So do have a look at your website and say, do people understand what we do? If they got our key messages, our contact details, and our form at the very least, without having to scroll down? And it's amazing how many websites fail that test. It's quite basic web design, but there's lots of web companies that don't comply with that.
Absolutely, and also on to tip number 4, which leads nicely down, thanks, onto making sure that we're optimised for mobile. So in general, just under 70%, just under 68.5, I think last time I looked, of all traffic is to mobile devices across the board. I'm talking in general. So depending on your type of business, that might be higher, and some B2B might be slightly lower, but there's definitely a significant percentage of your visitors that are accessing your website and your forms and your landing pages via mobile devices, whether that be smartphones or tablets. So again, making sure, I mean, they might look fantastic on a desktop computer on a huge screen, but has anyone actually gone to the trouble of looking at that on an iPhone, on a mobile, on a Samsung Galaxy, on a tablet, to make sure that it all works, the buttons are big enough to press, it's nice and easy to fill in the forms, and everything's formatted as it should be on a mobile phone, because a lot of us do use mobile now as a first step, especially when doing some research and some diligence. And again, the last section is, we don't want to provide an escape route, really. So if people want to find out about us, fine, they can. But let's not give, we don't want to include website navigation or any links off this page. It's a one-way street. You give us your information, or you go away and find out about us in another way. We don't want to give anyone an escape route other than filling the form and giving them the messages on page. And again, that's something that we found, again, the data backs this up. The landing pages that don't give escape routes convert more effectively than ones that include website navigation, because people sort of wander off and start looking at your services, then get distracted and don't give you that information. As I said at the start, we've spent at worst, a lot of our time and effort and money to get people to our landing, and often quite significant budgets to get people to our website and our landing pages. So we should do everything in our power to make sure we're optimising those leads to turn them into real business leads rather than just website businesses.
Okay, thanks, Karl. So in terms of our presentation, we've really come to the last couple of sections, so we won't keep you too much longer. But hopefully there's something there that you can take away and look at yourself, at least get you thinking about your marketing. And if you do choose to work with an agency ourselves or anyone else, then there's some tips that at least give you some guidance. So in terms of how we start kickstarting those sales then, because I was talking to the guys from the chamber yesterday and to other people in business, and I think we're probably like many others in that, you know, we experienced a couple of weeks where there were people that were tightening their belts a little, and then the last couple of weeks things have started to loosen up again, to free up again, and projects have started to be commissioned a little more. So we're at a time now where we can very much start thinking about kickstarting our sales, and I think that's where your brand messaging is very, very important. It's the perfect time to make sure that your brand messaging truly, authentically represents your products and services. And the one bit of advice I would say is to make sure that your messaging is about what your brand, what your products and services can do for your customer, in opposed to just an explanation of what it is you do. And I think if you would look at it and say, is this what a consumer brand would say? If it isn't, then you're probably missing an opportunity to make it a lot more customer focused. Very much look at your prospects. I think going back to that call last night with the Sendable team that I participated in, I think there's a lot of truth in people wanting to have quicker than usual returns, because everybody has, you know, a very conscious view on their cash flow at the moment. So in terms of identifying your prospects, look at who it is that we're wanting to engage with and how we can get results from them more quickly. So advice would be, if you have a good prospect database, then fantastic. If you haven't, please do work on that. Segment that as best you can. And email marketing and PPC marketing are two ways of getting quite immediate results, in opposed to SEO, which is our number one recommendation, but is something for the medium to long term. Plan your marketing channels. So we have people that come to us at times and say, I want a social media campaign. And we always say, what for? You may want a social media campaign, but what we really want to look at is, what is it you're wanting to achieve? So if you're wanting to achieve a certain sales growth, if you're wanting to promote a particular product, people know after, say, Monday or Tuesday of next week, if you're back in the office and you want people to know that you're actually ready for business, then that would be your message. But plan your message and then look at the most effective marketing channel to reach your prospects with, or your customers with, rather than purely looking at doing a social media campaign or a direct marketing campaign without actually knowing the purpose, actually knowing what results it is that you're wanting to achieve. And also at the moment, it might seem obvious, but we're big fans of postal marketing, direct marketing at times, but at the moment, we're probably like many other businesses in that we haven't received that post for many weeks because we're not in the office. So think more digitally. It is something that will certainly be one of the big, the big changing factors of what's happened over the last 6 or 7 weeks internationally, that digital channels will become more a part of our everyday business life. So do look at how you can be more digital. And that might be, if you have a product or service, you might be able to offer that online, or you might be able to create an online tool to be able to allow people to interact with you better. So an example of that would be, we've got a lot of clients who are professional service businesses, and we've created portals that allow their clients to log in and access sensitive information behind a password protected portal. And that information may previously have been face-to-face with a customer service person who's gone for a visit. But because of current circumstances, that needs to be digitalized. So don't always think that digital is about e-commerce. It might be about making a business process simpler, because you can't in fact meet face-to-face given the current circumstances. And even when we're allowed to do so, there'll be a little bit of resistance because people have got very used to Zoom calls and the like. So we need to adapt as businesses to make ourselves more in line with people's wants as customers. And finally, just a reminder on the complimentary marketing consultation, because I'm aware we've got people who are in the industry who will probably think this is all very basic, and we've got people that perhaps might be new to marketing. So what we wanted to do is make everything as tailored to people as we possibly can. So please do get in touch with us, and we'll have a look at your marketing strategy. We'll have a look at your SEO and PPC performance. If you're doing it or not, we can give you some advice and tell you the best course of action to proceed. Have a look at your website, do a technical report, and there might be things there you can actually fix yourselves. There might be others that you have in your mind to fix with a professional agency in the future, or even just want to chat through a fresh perspective on your marketing plans. We very much like to do that. So there's an offer there to do that completely free of charge, either via a Zoom call or by an email or telephone exchange. We're ready and waiting to do that. But hopefully that wouldn't take you too long today. And yeah, we have some opportunities to answer any questions if anybody has any they'd like us to look at. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Karl, do you just want to kind of close the screen down, if that's right, just so we can...
No problem, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I know that there is a chat, there is a question in the chat box, which I'll bring up in a second, but I just want to say thank you very much to Dan and Karl. I think I did speak to Dan yesterday about it. I think for me, and a lot of probably businesses can relate to this, is on one side, you've got businesses who are wanting to generate leads and sell their product or service, but on the other hand, they're kind of thinking, is it the right thing to do? Is it morally right going through these challenging times? And then on the third hand, they're kind of wondering, well, where is that income coming from? So in summary, could you kind of give a bit of a kind of a summary in terms of what businesses should and shouldn't be doing in your advice, whether it comes to generating leads and actually going out proactively selling? Do you think that's the right thing to do?
I think there is definitely a dilemma, and hopefully we sort of picked up on some of those key points during the presentation. But most definitely, our advice, and the term that seems to be amongst marketeers at the moment, is all about compassionate communication. So I think it's completely wrong just to bury your head in the sand and not say anything at all, because there will be. Firstly, if you're not saying anything at all, then you're not helping the situation. So I think you need to actually be out there with a message, but that message needs to be sensitive to what's happening in the world. And it needs to be sensitive to what your clients are wanting and what your prospects are wanting to hear. Because if people aren't in a mood to be buying, then however good your sales message are, it won't be an effective marketing communications campaign. So our communications as an agency have all been focused on how we can try to help not only our clients and prospects, but the wider business community by doing what we do, which is to give marketing consultancy. And off the back of that marketing consultancy, there will be people that say, I have a project, I'm happy to commence with that project. And that has happened during the lockdown period. But for most people, we're just there as some friendly advice, and there might be things they can do themselves, and that will very much help them. So I'll put my other hat on as somebody who is a potential customer. I found it very useful that the people in the legal profession and the finance profession who have been able to try to help us through the legalities, throughout the support that's available, and those companies, I'm sure, that is marketing activity for them that is going to bear dividend going forward, because I've remembered the people that have been there and haven't asked us to pay a bill. They've just given us their advice. So I think to give people advice, to give people help and support, and let people know that you're there, and also let people know what it is you're doing. So if you are open, but you're open different hours, if there are different ways of getting in touch with you because maybe you haven't been able to redirect the office phone, if you've got particular services that are available now and others that aren't, if your lead times have changed, they're the kind of messages that let people know, that you're a business that's still open, albeit in a flexible way. Whereas by saying nothing at all, the assumption could be that actually those guys are hibernating. And if you're not, then that's the worst scenario.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. I just think that's relevant and relatable to a lot of businesses.
Absolutely.
We want to get that message out. We want to generate sales to get the income in, but there's just a bit of a dilemma on whether it's morally right to do or not, really. So thank you for that. We do have a question from Richard Pilgrim. So with your existing client base, do you develop mobile first as a standard, or do you build desktop and optimize for mobile? Appreciate this is a bit of a generic question. Are there certain sectors where typical visitors are from desktop or typically from a mobile device?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, if there was an answer that was one or the other, it would be mobile first. That's what would be best practice within the digital communities. You want to add a talk to that, Karl? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
that's your area, isn't it? And you're obviously bright in SEO quite recently.
Yeah, I mean, we're led by data, to be honest. I mean, a lot of our clients in the B2B sector still have the majority of their visits via desktop, as you'd expect. People in the office, so between the hours 9 and 5-ish. I mean, that does differ a little bit. But if we do some analytics and look at their historic data set and look at their analytic data and see where they're getting their visits from, and then compare that to, as someone mentioned in another question, to look at that related to their sector, so make sure they're not, an anomaly, and the actual sector as a whole fits that bracket. So we'd always develop in tandem, and with mobile definitely optimized. However, if there's the right answer, as Dan said earlier, if we're unsure or the data's not there, we develop mobile first, because the vast majority of people at some stage do visit a website on a mobile device. I
mean, you might be finding with the analytics that you're actually getting more desktop visitors, but that might be because the mobile experience is so poor.
Yeah.
So that's something to bear in mind. So there's a blanket answer, but as with anything, it's about working with the client and actually dealing with the analytics, because there's quite a lot of science you can put behind it. I very nearly said it'd be led by the science, Karl, but I thought
don't do that. Please don't do that.
But no, in terms of the way we do it, then with digital, the beauty is you can use analytics. So there's much more of a scientific approach than there ever has been to marketing.
We'd never not develop a site and make sure it's mobile friendly. I mean, we've been responsive for the past at least 4 or 5 years. I mean, looking back sort of 5 or 6 years, there was very much 2 different ways to look at looking at website design and development. So looking at either having a separate m.mobile site, so that'd be accessed, there'd be a detection area. You could have an option to visit a mobile version of a website, which would be totally standalone and separate from the desktop. But responsive is the way to go, in my opinion, and been the way that we've developed as an agency for a while now. And that means that it's the same website, the same core code information, and we pick up the screen size from the device that's being used to access it, and automatically adjust the layout, a fluid layout to fit the screen size of the viewer, rather than having 2 separate websites.
Yeah.
Thank you. Richard, does that answer your question, or do you want to just touch on anything else? Happy for you to put the thumbs up if you're happy with that, or speak, whatever you want to do.
I was going to do both. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We've got a question from Matt, and I believe it's Matt at Canon PR. When working with landing pages, is there the danger of being penalised by Google? Also, what are the pros and cons of single-page scrolling sites versus multiple-page sites, and the impact it has upon sharing pertinent information above the fold line referred to in the presentation?
Okay, yeah, so there's 2 questions there, Karl. Do you want to take the one on the... it seems very much like the government's press conference, isn't it? Do you want to take the first one, landing pages, then?
Yeah. I mean, if landing pages...
I'll do what they normally do. You can take the difficult one.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be Matt Hancock. No, landing pages, I've heard stories of people being penalised for spuriously using lots of different landing pages.
Yeah.
If your landing page is on your own domain name, so it's / product name or service name, and it's developed to best practices, and it's including the site index and the sitemap, I've not come across anyone who's been penalised for doing it that way, which is the way we do it. If you're setting up a domain name specifically for that landing page, and having just various different landing pages with very, very similar content, all directing back contact forms back to yourselves, then I would say you've got a very good chance of being penalised by Google, and that website in particular not being ranked. However, if you just want to use it for digital marketing purposes, and you're not particularly enamoured or bothered about it having a natural Google rank, the effects on your quality scores going to be there, but you can still create a web page that's a landing page that is going to be effective. But my advice would be to keep it within your own website structure on your own domain name that will have a domain authority and trust anyway. So giving people just the information they're looking for from an ad won't be penalised. Doing it in a way that is spurious to create I've seen it before, lots of different landing pages on lots of different domain names, all with very, very similar content, then I think you're running a risk of being penalised or found out, absolutely.
And I think there are some tools that allow you to easily sort of cheat the system and create landing pages, but they might not be created in the correct manner. So obviously when you're working with an agency and we're doing it from your core domain from your website, then that is the correct way to do it. So there's always a risk really when you're trying to take a shortcut that you're actually not doing things the correct way, and therefore there will be ramifications from that.
And also the most important thing is to make sure the landing page doesn't have to be accessible via navigation, but make sure it's in your sitemap, because then you're not trying to hide it, you're not trying to do anything spurious, you just want to send people to one dead end page to give them specific information.
Yeah, I mean a good bit of advice on SEO, so on optimization, is that Google have made it a lot harder, and so with the other search engines, over even the past 4 or 5 years, there was a time where it was known as a bit of a black art. But what they've actually done is made it more authentic. So if you're trying to do the right thing and you are genuinely, the right business to attract customers to the search terms you're using, you're generally not going to be penalised for that. It's only really when you're trying to do something that is cheating the system that you have got cause to worry. To take the second question, which is about scrolling websites rather than a more traditional layout, we'd still say that all your core information most definitely needs to be above the fold, but there's not necessarily a right or wrong on that, is there, Carl, in terms of whether you go page by page or scrolling?
No.
The scrolling websites can look a little dated now, in that was a trend 2 or 3 years ago, but there are occasions where they are the best way to proceed.
I think the key is when you've got a one-page site, for example, or a very, very in-depth long web page. If we're working with a client looking at just this at the minute, and the information they've got on this particular landing page, or the target page for SEO, should I say, is great and very well ranked by Google, but the actual page is very, very long and in depth. So what we're looking to do is, and what we're going to be implementing, is to put little shortcuts and little synopses at the top of the page that is in view. So one succinct sentence that might give you a clue that there's a named anchor. We call a named anchor, so you can put the bullet points or a sentence about each section of your one-page scrolling website or your very, very in-depth web page, that people get the key points above the fold, but they can click them and jump straight to that section further down the page. So that's one way of dealing with it that we find is very successful.
And I think there's a bit of advice. I'd also say, if you were to land on that page, would you genuinely go to the bottom and read all that information? Because if you wouldn't, then why would you ask your customer to do so? And when we're editing work from our team, I always say, as a rule of thumb, if we can remove a word, remove a sentence, and we still get across that pertinent message, let's keep on doing that until such time that we have to compromise the message. So it's a cliche, but less is more. When it comes to when it comes to messaging, make sure that we make it as easy as we can to the to the time poor user that's going to be on the site looking to buy our goods or services.
Thank you very much, guys. I hope that's answered your question for you, Matt. Yeah, perfect. Thumbs up. Has anybody else got any questions that they're happy to just speak to the guys on? Anything that's working for you, not working for you? Anything you want kind of guidance and advice on? Please feel free to raise your virtual hand, raise your real hand, whatever you want to do. No?
Yep.
Oh, we've got Claire. Yeah, Claire, do you want to come in? No problem if you want to unmute yourself. There we go. I think I've done it for you. No, I haven't. Yeah, there you go.
Can I just say, I worked with Dan and Carl when I first set my business up 9 years ago, and it was the best investment that I ever made, because that is how Ascendo Coaching was formed. Dan came up with 3 potential opportunities for me, and I went with the middle option. And people still ask me today, what is the meaning of Ascendo? And it gives me great pride to say it's the Latin for ignite, and that's what I do when I work with my clients. And I still put stories on my website now, because that was the advice that Dan gave 9 years ago, was to write stories. So even though I now manage my own website, because that was down to cost, I've still implemented the things that I've learned, and I've taken some of my training online, and it'll the first one goes live on Monday, and people are buying, and I've had a 300% increase in sales by putting my training online. And that's been my success. And there's still things that I need to learn. And I've got some takeaways from today. So I just want to say thank you for putting this together, because it's been great.
Thank you.
No, that's great, and it's good to hear that. Yeah, I mean, the principles will be the same. It's just how we adapt them to the current circumstances. So it's good to see that the principles carry on over time, but it's just how we adapt. As I say, given the circumstances, and putting your materials online is an example of that. Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to ask a question? Anything burning that they'd like to discuss? I'm trying to flick through, so just keep your hand up if you have got one up. If you've not, no worries. I can't see anybody's hand up, but nobody's speaking, so.
In terms of the consultation, then really that's an opportunity. If there's something very specific, or even just want another opinion, then that's something we'd very much encourage you to do. So if you don't mind, if it's easier to filter that through the chamber and out to us, that's great. If you want to take an email address, it's hello@objectivecreative.com, and then we'll respond to that over the next few days and just get time, even if it's just for another opinion, because that's often all it takes, really, just to talk something through. We're happy to do that, practice what we preach.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. What I'll do then, I'll send out this recording along with the slides and the email addresses that the guys of Objective Creative for you guys to follow up with. Sam, is there anything from you guys before?
No, it's really that if you want to talk through everything, then please get in touch. No commitment. We're not looking necessarily at this point to sell. What we're trying to do is say, we can help you, then hopefully you'll remember us like we've remembered the guys that have told us all about the support that's been available, from a finance position or a legal position, So we're just trying to sort of give a bit back that way. So, and also it gets me away from watching Clubhouse Disney again with a 1-year-old. So, there's two benefits to that as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
I've got a reason to wear a shirt as well today.
Yeah, there is that.
Yourself, Sam?
I just wanted to say thanks to the guys from Objective Creative. It was a really interesting session. Thanks. I'd just like to encourage everybody to take up the offer of a free audit. You absolutely should. Shall I plug the joint events we're doing together again next week?
You never miss a plug, Sam, so off you go, mate.
Yeah, so everybody, we've got three events that we're doing together next week as regional chambers. So the first one being on Monday, that's an economic update with the Bank of England. So it should be quite interesting, and I presume you can book on that through all the regional chambers websites. We are doing our first city region business breakfast networking event on Thursday next week, so that should be a laugh. And then we've also got on Wednesday a live Q&A with James Muir, who is chair of the Sheffield City Region LEP. So I think some good events that we're working on as joint chambers next week. So I'll hopefully see you all on them. Last thing from me is happy VE Day for tomorrow, and have a nice bank holiday, everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam. And I will just plug one event as well that we're doing as Barnsley and Rotherham, because I know Jessica's in the virtual room as well. We've got, just following on from a marketing point of view, Jessica's doing a webinar on the 13th focused around email marketing. So that is on our website. We will send links out when I do the follow-up email with the slides, with the links to both chamber websites, because I know Sheffield have launched their new website as well. So we'll plug that as well for you. But thank you very much for this morning. Hope we don't talk too much if you're up and you can go and enjoy the sun while you're working on your business. But thank you very much, and please take care. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.